Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am very, very blessed to be once again having a conversation with my dear friend Safi Kaskas. Safi is a Muslim who loves Jesus, and he and I have had a couple of conversations in the past, and they've always been really encouraging. So, Safi, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great. So I'll start off by just saying what inspired this conversation. I had shared something a few days ago on Facebook, which I've shared before. It's actually a meme that I didn't create this, but it is based on something that I said that I posted on my Pathos blog. And someone had kind of created it for me. And I thought, well, this is great. So I shared it. And what it says is, God just forgives. It's how God responds to sin, forgiveness. It's how God responds to us, love. Just total and complete, inexplicable love. Why? Because God is love. It's just who God is. And when I shared it, I was kind of surprised that you had replied. You had responded to what I had said
immediately. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Right away.
Yeah.
And I was so inspired by your response. I said, well, hey, let's talk about this. So if I can I read what you had posted?
Sure, I have it right here in front of me, but
why don't you read it? Why don't you read it?
Okay. I said, Keith, this is the salvation theory from the Quran. Mind you, if it is true, and I believe it is, why did God need to send his only begotten son to die on the cross to reconcile us back to the Father? Why did we need a ransom according to Christianity? When I sin, I simply get down on my knees and ask God for forgiveness. He forgives me because he is love. If we ask for his forgiveness, he promised to give it to us.
Yes, I love that.
Logical.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. And so when you posted that, I was like, this sounds like a great conversation we need to have here. So thank you for being willing to come on and talk about it.
Anytime.
Yeah. So, it is fascinating, isn't it? Because I think I do know that a lot of Christians do, they do believe, as you said there, that God needed to send his only begotten son to die on a cross. And this would reconcile us to the Father, or that God needed some kind of a ransom to be paid before forgiveness could happen. And I used to believe that, and I do understand now why I was taught that growing up. There are certain streams of Christianity where that theology has become the main theology. And actually, I wrote a book about it, just real quick, if anybody's curious on how to go really deeper in it. So it's called Jesus Unforsaken. And and it looks into the history of where that came from. But those are good questions. I mean, why do Christians think that God needed to send his only begotten son to die on the cross? Which I think it is a misunderstanding of even the New Testament scriptures. Like even when there are certain scriptures in the New Testament, for example, like in the book of Hebrews, it'll say something like, and Christians love to quote this when you challenge this idea that God required a sacrifice. They'll say, but it says in the book of Hebrews that without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. But what they don't understand is that they're reading that wrong. If you read the entire book of Hebrews, and especially that chapter where that verse appears, the point the author of Hebrews is trying to make is he's contrasting the old covenant way of thinking about atonement and forgiveness, which was based on, offering an animal on a sacrifice. And it's saying, under the old covenant, this was the way they thought about it. But then it contrasts that and says, but under the new covenant, God doesn't require this actually. And it actually is making the opposite point. So Christians only read that one verse and think that the point is that God requires blood for the forgiveness of sins. But if they just keep reading, what it actually says is Jesus speaks in Hebrews and says to God, here I am to do your will, even though you did not require sacrifices for sin. And so it's actually a contradiction of that idea, but we're taught it in a certain way in Christianity. We're taught it in a certain way that seems to affirm that God requires that sacrifice. And that isn't the case. That's what I'm trying to help Christians understand we're very confused about Jesus and what he was doing and all of that.
Well, there is a problem with this, Keith. I realized long time ago, when I try to go back to the basic with Islam and try to reconstruct my own faith based on the teachings of the Quran, which is an extension in my own mind to the New Testament, which is an extension to the Old Testament.
Yeah.
So when I try to say, well, the Quran teaches this, but you all, in the last 1400 years, constructed in your mind that it is this way.
Yes.
And it's much simpler. It is this way. Oh, no, no. You are not talking about the Islam we know. Therefore, you're trying to invent a new religion.
Right.
I'm not trying to invent anything. I'm trying to obey God the way I best understand his message.
Yeah.
And if his message is not self-contradictory, it's not contradicting the New Testament and it's not contradicting the Old Testament,
right,
then how can I be wrong?
Right.
You know?
Right.
So we are both running, apparently, and I didn't know this, to tell you the truth, but we are both running to the same problem.
Yeah.
We are trying to say it is the street, that the road lead to the right. No, 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 no. We're going to the left.
Right.
You know, so I'm sorry. But when I agreed to come to this interview, I did not know that you see it this way. Well, actually, basically, we see it the same way.
Yes.
You know?
Well, that's what I found fascinating.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God, you know.
Right.
You know, basically, God is love. We agree
Yes.
on this.
Yes.
God loves all of us.
Yes.
Keith, the Quran is amazing because the Quran says that God honored all human beings. All human beings are honored in the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
And then in another place in the Quran, God says the record of those who criminally opposed God. In other words, not only that they didn't want to believe, but they committed physical, hurt against believers.
Yeah.
God keeps their record with him in a closed database. And the record of the believers who are going to heaven in an open database.
Uh-huh.
So people ask me, why would he keep the criminals' record in a closed database? Because he honored even those criminals, because he honored the children of Adam. The way he created us. We're created to be honored by him.
Yes.
And in the Quran, we're not called, like some Muslim translate, we're not called slaves of Allah. We're not called servants of Allah. On planet Earth, God does not need slaves or servants.
Yes.
What God calls us in the Quran, according to my own translation, is potential worshipers.
Mm.
Potential worship. He created all of us to potentially choose him with our free will and worship him instead of worshiping our own ego or other idols or partners with him.
Yes.
So that's also part of the way he honored us. He created us, gave us free will, so we can freely choose him.
Right.
This is part of the way he honored us.
Yes.
Then he kept saying, I'm sending you on earth. See, here is a major difference between Muslims' understanding in general of why we're on planet Earth and generally the Christian understanding of this. Let me state what I believe to be the Christian understanding, and you correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
I believe Christians, at least the people I talk to, and I talk to really hundreds, if not thousands, they tell me that Adam sinned when he was in the garden with God. That's the original sin. And we all became sinners. We have a faulty nature. We are, the default in our nature is to sin. And therefore, we cannot reconcile back to God's head unless there is a ransom. Okay, that's generally what I think most Christians believe in. Here is the Muslim belief, which is extremely divergent, extremely different from that. There is actually a narrative that, and I wrote it down for you, points, so we can go in detail if you like later.
Yeah.
God created us. What does it mean God created us? Adam, in my understanding, from my translation of the Quran, is the first Homo sapien, the first human being with consciousness. Before Adam, they were other, but they didn't have consciousness, so they're not accountable for their deeds. But when God created Adam, he decided to give him consciousness. Then he gave him another program, which is freedom to choose. And then God had a covenant, brought us all together, all of us, you and I, everybody, in front of him, and says, am I not your Lord? We said, yes, you are. He said, so you will not say that you weren't aware of this. And then gave Adam the test to see if he learned to use the program of freedom to choose. So go eat from anywhere here except this tree. Wasn't a particular tree, could have been any tree. Wanted to see if Adam is going to exercise the new program of freedom to choose. And Adam, for the first time, realized he doesn't have to do what God is saying. There is something new here. I can do it or not do it. Then the Quran tells us that Lucifer came and swore to him that this tree in particular, that he's standing wondering whether to eat from or not, will give him eternity and he will be better than the angels. No one ever lied to Adam before. That was the first time he hears a lie. So he decided to exercise his freedom to choose and ate from the tree and then gave his wife. So she's an innocent bystander. She did what he asked her to do.
Right.
She's not responsible for our downfall.
Yeah.
So the minute Adam, the Quran says, tasted the fruit, he realized he did something wrong. So his natural reaction was to turn to God and say, what do I do now? I did something wrong. What do I do now? That never happened before.
Right.
God decided to accept his repentance. He taught him how to repent. Then he taught him how to ask for forgiveness. The first forgiveness mentioned in the Quran is God's forgiveness to Adam for not obeying God. But not obeying God at that time means the program worked.
Yeah.
So now Adam is ready to go down to planet Earth for a short while and exercise that freedom to choose. If he chose God freely, and if he loved his neighbor and became beneficial to the environment around him, this is what's taught to us in the Quran, then he's saved. He's not asked to move mountains. He's not asked to do miracles.
Right.
Simply, he's asked to accept God as his creator and the creator of this universe. And being here, he's asked to be kind to his neighbors and kind to the planet who was put in charge of. While here on earth, we're in charge of this planet. God says, don't mess it up. You're in charge of it. So try to at least leave it the way you found it.
Right.
So, and he said, all those who are not listening to me right now will still have a chance to be forgiven. All they have to do is ask for forgiveness, and I will forgive them because I was made to be a forgiver. I forgive people who say, this is what I get my pleasure from.
Yeah.
I'm made of love and I forgive. All you have to do is ask for forgiveness. Now, for those, this is another question that you always raise. I'm going to touch on it right now. For all those who refuse to ask for forgiveness, had a chance every morning, all day long to the evening, to ask for forgiveness and say, no, I refuse to agree that God is my creator. I'm an accident of nature. I was born accidentally. I was put here, by some kind of weird, and I don't want to be nice to others. As a matter of fact, I'm going to use them and abuse them and climb on each one I encounter until they're all under my feet. If this guy dies with these ideas, God said he'll end up in hell. Not that God doesn't want to forgive him, but if he refused to be forgiven, why should God forgive him? This is the theory of punishment. So I gave you the theory of forgiveness and the theory of punishment. One time the Prophet Muhammad was asked, why would God send anybody to hell? Who would go to hell? He said, those who refuse to go to heaven. They said, who would refuse to go to heaven? He said, those that are rejecting all the messages God sent to them.
Right.
Yeah. So
I thank you for that. That's actually so great. And I love a lot of what you were sharing there. That was really fascinating. Like, I love the idea of original forgiveness in the garden, because most of the time Christians focus on the original sin, rather than the original forgiveness. That forgiveness was offered by God on the spot. And so I love that. And I want to respond to to the question of hell, and because I don't know if we see the same way on that, but that's okay. I mean, we're not looking to argue. We're looking to find common ground. But again, so there's, of course, the Christian view of hell as well. The Christians believe that those that don't accept Jesus, or believe that Christ was the Messiah, that they're also going to go to hell, or if they reject God in general, the love of God. But my view on that has shifted a little bit recently, because I feel like in the scenario you just gave. So someone has lived their life, they are denying God, they don't believe that there is a God. Their belief is that, I was born by random accident or evolution or whatever, or if there is a God, I don't believe in that God. And so they don't live their life in a certain way, and then they die in sort of rebellion to God, having not responded to the love of God or the forgiveness of God. So what happens to those people? So I think what I've been really blessed to discover is that the Christian view of hell that I grew up with was very cut and dried, very like, well, if you die like that way, it's over, game over, forever in eternity, you will go to hell. But what I found was that studying church history, for about the first 400 to 500 years of church history, there were different views of what happens to those who die rejecting Christ, or die, not accepting the love or forgiveness of God. There were actually three views. And so one view was the one that most Christians have today, which was that eternal torment. You have as long as you're alive, you have time to choose. But once you die, that's it. Your time is up, and you don't get to choose anymore. And now you will suffer eternal torment. But in the early church, for about the first 400 to 500 years, that was the minority view. The other two views were annihilation, which is the idea that if you died that way, rejecting Christ and the love of God, you would just be burned up. You would be thrown in the lake of fire, but burned up, and so you're dead and you're gone. You don't exist anymore. But the majority view, and again, I never knew this until I studied church history and started reading early church fathers and things like this, that the majority of Christian views was that actually not even close to either one of those views. And actually the view was that everyone who dies, even if you are someone who loved God, even if you are someone who received the love of God and the forgiveness that God offers, and all that, everyone, good, bad, Christian, non-Christian, believing in God, not believing in God, everyone who dies goes through, passes through the fire. And this is a metaphor. Because none of us, even if we in this life receive the love and the forgiveness of God, we're not perfect. We still have made mistakes. There's still things we haven't done that have been pleasing to God. And so everyone who dies, no matter who they are, no matter what they believe, we all pass through the fire. And again, this is a metaphor for a process of refining and cleansing and being made righteous, being made into the image of God. And so again, there are verses in the New Testament, many, I found 76 of them, that affirm this idea that, like one of the examples is in Hebrews chapter 12. It says some pretty amazing things. It says, first of all, that God disciplines those that he loves, and that and his children. He uses the metaphor that we are all the children of God, and God is a loving father, and God disciplines his children. And in fact, if you don't undergo discipline, you're not a true child of God. But then it says, but everyone undergoes the Lord's discipline. Well, if God only disciplines his children that he loves, and everyone undergoes discipline, that must mean everyone is loved by God, and everyone goes through this form of discipline. It's because God loves us that we go through the discipline. But what is the purpose and the nature of the discipline? Well, if you keep reading in that chapter, it says this, that God disciplines all of us for our good, so that we can share in the holiness of God. And that this discipline that we all go through, because we're all loved by God, the purpose of that discipline is not torture for eternity. The purpose of the discipline is not to burn you up and you cease to exist. No, the purpose of God's discipline is so that we can share in the holiness of God, and it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness. So there's a purpose to that hell that anyone will be sent to. So what I believe is that whoever ends up going through this fire, this hell, whatever this looks like, whatever metaphor we use for it, that we all come out the other side, loved and forgiven and healed and restored into the original image of what God created us to be, in the image of God. And so yeah, I don't look at that as the as sort of the final word. Like, I think here's the other thing too that I think is worth noting. Like, so someone in this life who rejects God and rejects the love of God, they what they're rejecting isn't God, because they don't know who God really is. They cannot truly see and understand who God truly is. They reject either God because God is a myth, God is a made-up story, God is a man in the sky with a beard, or whatever. So I don't believe in fairy tales. That's why I don't believe in that God. Or they've been told that there is no God. It's all science. It's all evolution. Therefore, I'm an accident. So that is also a lie. It's not true. They're living under a delusion. So
yes,
whatever it is they reject it because they don't know the truth. They reject it because they have not had an opportunity to exercise their free will to truly see, well, who is God? And what is God like? And so in this life, their eyes are veiled, they're confused, they're told lies, they believe those lies, and then they die. Well, then when they die, like what Paul says is that, now, in this life, we have a veil, but one day we'll see clearly. We will know God as we are known.
Again, Keith, you are speaking Quranic language.
Great. Awesome.
No. This is shocking to me.
Yeah.
If you got all this from Hebrew, I don't know how I missed it. But thank God you brought it to my attention so I can go back and read it again.
Yeah.
Like you, I did a lot of research in early Christianity. Not in Christianity today, but in early Christianity.
Yes.
Because I wanted to see how did this faith started? What did the early followers say or heard or reported, and how it became what it is today? Now, this third view that you mentioned, that we are all going to pass by the fire, is in the Quran.
Really? Wow.
Wait.
Awesome.
You need to understand one thing, that 99.9% of people on earth don't know, including Muslims.
Yeah.
The Quran is a commentary on the previous books. It was sent to comment on the previous books. So what's in it is about the critical points in them.
Yes.
So what's in the Quran? it's very relevant to our life here today
Oh,
in
that's
the
great.
21st century,
Yeah.
as it was in the 10th century, as it's going to be in the 30th century, if Earth would last that long, if Vladimir Putin doesn't blow it all up. So,
Right.
but that remains to be seen. So it says in Arabic, I'm going to quote the Quran in Arabic and translate it.
Okay.
وَمَا مِنْكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا. None of you will escape passing through it. That's clear confirmation to what you said.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I don't talk about this at all, because I am not able to understand with my human brain anything past death.
Right.
So I only comment and focus when I talk about Islam about matters of life. Because although God in the Quran talked a lot about what we're going to encounter after death, but I'm not sure whether he used a metaphorical language, whether he used real events thing. For instance, I'll give you a logical example. You looks like a logical man. When I was living in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, I was right there at the Red Sea. So I used to go swim and dive very often. And I learned to do scuba diving. Before I scuba dive, I have to wear the scuba diving gear. Why? Why don't I just jump to the water and stay there for half an hour? Because that environment requires special equipment. Living on Earth requires this special equipment, my
Yes.
body.
Yes.
But life in heaven doesn't need this suit that I'm wearing here on Earth.
Right.
Nor does life in another planet require this. So when I want, after death, my body, this breathing suit that helps me live on Earth, stay behind.
Yeah.
So although God in the Quran talks about a resurrection, I don't know the terms used are real or metaphorical. I don't know.
Yes.
So I don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I decided loving everybody on earth and teaching everybody a new paradigm of peaceful living. Everybody. Changing the existing paradigm on earth today from a paradigm of power. Kissinger taught us this. If you can take it, grab it and defend it. It's yours.
Mm.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
There is another Jew who came out with another paradigm. It's a paradigm of love. And he says, if you want it, if someone wants your coat, give him your shirt even.
Yes.
So I'd like that paradigm.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I love that paradigm because it confirms everything I learned from childhood in the Quran. The Quran says the same thing.
Yeah.
So everything related to life, I will discuss, and I'm fully sure that what I'm saying has confirmation to God's message to me.
Yeah.
Anything after life is up to God. All I can say is, I am in agreement. I accept what you are saying, Lord, although I don't understand it necessarily in my earthly brain.
Yeah.
But I accept it.
Yes.
For instance, give you an example. Do you think you are going to go to heaven after death, Keith?
I believe so. Yes.
Let's hope so.
Yes.
I believe the same thing. What are you going to do? What are you going to do there?
I have no idea, except be
Well,
in the
you
presence
see,
of God.
This is it.
Yes.
This is it. This is it. We don't know.
Right.
If every day is going to be the same, logically, this will be very boring.
Right.
But I don't think it is.
No,
I think my understanding, the way God's message is interpreted in my earthly brain is very boring.
Yeah.
God didn't tell me exactly what's going to be there, because if he does, I might not be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
Therefore, I only accept that I want to be with him and leave the details to him. So I think the most important message God sent to us, whether you are born in the United States, Russia, China, or anywhere else, is to know that you were created by God and you're here on earth to love him and love your neighbors.
Yes.
On these two messages, they're the foundation of everything that God sent to us.
Exactly.
This is it.
Yes.
That's the whole thing from A to Z.
Yes.
There is nothing else in between except details.
That's I love that. That's so true. It's so funny because I had a conversation with someone, just kind of a stranger, earlier this week, and we talked about exactly that. We were talking about how all these different religions and they all disagree and they all think they're right and everyone else is wrong, and then they argue and then they fight and they tell you're going to hell because you don't agree with us and blah blah blah. And this was literally like I was at a bookstore and this guy owns the bookstore and we just started talking, and we're talking about this, and we said yes, it's so funny we make it so complicated when really the only things we have to do, the only things we have to worry about is to love God and to love others. If we and in a way it's so simple, right? Simply love God and love others. It's not that complicated. Now, the problem is though, of course, it sounds easy, love God and love others, but once you start trying to do those two things, you realize, well, it really isn't very easy. And so, I think
I did a study once. You want me to share it with you?
Yes, please. Yes.
I am a part of an evangelical movement here called the Family, and they put every year the National Prayer Breakfast.
Yes, yes.
So one day, I was speaking to the leader of that movement. His name is Douglas Coe. Doug Coe is dead now. A couple of years died.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, he died. But he and I were talking about loving God and loving neighbor. And I said, just give me an hour, I'll get back to you. I went on that short street, knocked on every door. It was like 11 in the morning. And usually the ladies at home and the men are at work. Ma'am, I have a couple of questions for you. Do you mind? She said, please. Said, do you love God? Oh, yes. Do you love your neighbor? Yes. How do you love your neighbor? Huh? None, no one, not even one, told me an answer that is convincing. It could have been as nice as, when I see my neighbor in the morning, I smile. It could have been that. Yep. Or when I cook a nice soup, I'll take a cup to my neighbor. Or my neighbor is old, so I check on her every once in a while, see if she needs any help, whatever. Or they have children and I babysit sometime.
Yep.
None of that happened. When I asked, how do you love your neighbor? They looked like they were surprised with the question, had no answer.
Yes.
So I went back to my friend, Dakko, and I told him what happened. Apparently, whether people are Christian or Muslims or Jews, they need to be re-educated. And the concept of loving your neighbor need to be reinforced.
Yes.
With instructions. They need a living example, maybe. Someone modeling, So I started asking friends, where do you live? Well, I live so-and-so, give me the address. Do you know your neighbors on the right and the left? Yes, I do. Well, are you friends? Well, not much. I said, look, unless you model to them the love you have for them, that God ordered you to have for them, unless you model that and build a true relationship with them to show that love is real. I cannot love a stranger. I can love him theoretically, but to truly love him, I have to know him.
Yes.
He has to know me. So unless we model that love, each one of us, right next to the neighbor next door. So we're not saying do something impossible. We're saying try to be nice to your next door neighbor. That's all.
Yes.
Unless we model that love, they might not know themselves how to express their own love. And we always need to remind them, I'm doing this because God asked me to love you, and I'm exercising that love. I just want you to know that I love you. Nothing's wrong with verbalizing this and saying it, and make sure that people feel it, you know?
Yes. Yes. No, I love that it's so beautiful. My family experienced something like that. So years ago, when my boys were smaller, we lived in Tustin, California, and the house next door to us went up for sale, and a young Filipino man bought the house. And even before he moved in, he knocked on our door, introduced himself, told us his name, said, I'm going to be your neighbor. And what are your names? And he went up and down the street on both sides, and he introduced himself.
Good.
And then when he finally moved in, he had a huge party, and he invited all of us over. So we all came over to his house. He had all this amazing food he had cooked. He had toys. He had bought toys for my sons and gave them toys. When we finally went home, he said, oh, do you want to take some food home with you? So I'm like, oh, okay. So I started to go over to the table, and I'm getting up, I have a plate, and I'm putting some food on the plate. He goes, no. He grabbed one of the whole serving trays full of these amazing Filipino food. I can't remember what it was called, but he just takes the whole tray and he goes, here, take this, give us the whole tray. And he was always doing this. He made my family feel like part of his family, right? And so we were so overwhelmed. We had never experienced a neighbor loving us this way before. So about a year later, we had to move to another house in Orange, California. And there was a little cul-de-sac. And we determined that because Neil, that was his name, because Neil had showed us and modeled for us what it looked like to be a good, loving neighbor, we decided we're going to be those people on our street. So we moved on to this new street, and we had all the kids came over to our house. We fed them. We invited people, our neighbors. We got to know their names. We had them over for dinner. We got to know them. We started doing every 4th of July. My wife and I would host. We would invite everybody in our cul-de-sac to our house, and we would make pancakes. We have a pancake breakfast in the driveway, and everybody came, and we had eggs and biscuits and pancakes, and everybody was great. What was great the first time we did it, everybody showed up. They had the pancakes, they had the breakfast. We all sat there together on my driveway, and they all started meeting each other. They're like, oh, well, where do you live? Oh, I live in that house. Oh, where do you? Oh, I live in that house. And they got to meet each other for the first time.
Yes.
And after that first time, they were like, this was so wonderful. We have to do this every year. So I guess we lived there for about 11 years. For every year, we would host the pancake breakfast in our driveway, and all the neighbors would come. And so at first, we were making Wendy and I, my wife and I, we were making all the pancakes. We were making the eggs. We were doing everything. But slowly, every time we did it, people would come. They'd bring, oh, I have orange trees in my backyard. Here's fresh squeezed orange juice to share. Or, I make biscuits, so I'm going to bring the biscuits. Or I'm going to bring eggs. Or I have a special egg recipe, like an egg casserole. I'm going to bring it. And slowly, everybody in our neighborhood, they all started contributing, and they all started bringing things. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I can actually take it all the way back to one guy, Neil. This guy, Neil, has no idea what he did for my family and all the families on our street by modeling what it looks like to really love your neighbor that way. And it's had a profound effect on my family. And again, now all the people on that street that we used to live on.
This is a beautiful story, Keith. Let me tell you now who I learned all this from. I learned it from my evangelical neighbors here. I don't know if you want me to go that far back, but 9/11 was kind of devastating to me.
Yes.
Because before 9/11, I was still talking to my neighbors in the United States about Islam and the fact that Islam is a religion of peace, and so on. But 9/11, in few seconds, in 30 seconds, ruined my work that I've done in 30 years.
Yeah.
And now I was faced with the fear that my neighbors think that I was lying to them. That night, the night that this terrorist thing happened, I was in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, doing a project for some clients. See, I'm a business consultant, and I have a company called Strategic Edge. So I do, business consulting. So I was in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, doing a project for a client, and she was here, and the boys were getting ready to go back to school, to college, and she didn't want to leave them until they're ready. Then 9/11 happened, and a friend of ours, a Palestinian friend of ours, told my wife, we're going to have a night vigil in that place I told you about. It's called The Family. Okay. And she said, if you bring the children and come, at least when you leave, they have people they know. And my son's name are Omar and Yasser. So their names are indicative, although they are born here in New Orleans, in Louisiana, where we were living. But now we're in Northern Virginia, and we were going to leave them here to go to George Mason University. And my wife thought, well, maybe I should go to that prayer vigil and introduce my children to everybody there. They'll have people they know. So she went there, and people were sitting in a circle, and they were praying. They prayed for the president, they prayed for the vice president, for the secretary of state, the head of the army, and suddenly someone started praying for Osama bin Laden. My wife couldn't believe her ears and started crying. When they finished, on her way back home on Highway 66, she was the only car on the highway that night. People were home, scared to leave. They didn't know what's going to happen next.
That's right.
She called me to Jeddah. She said, Safi, you will not believe what happened tonight. I met some people who pray for their enemies. I said, let me look into this. Let me investigate it, and I'll get back to you, honey. And I'm very happy that you went there. Later on, I decided that there are two kinds of Christians in the United States. One who was asking for revenge.
Yep.
And others who pray for their enemies.
Yes.
And we decided to stick with those who pray for their enemies.
Yes.
I am a product of that incident, of that philosophy,
yeah.
of taking a deeper look at what those people believe in. You cannot have reconciliation with people that you don't know what they believe in.
Right.
In order for you to love your Muslim neighbor, at least try to find out what the Quran teaches for yourself.
Right.
Don't listen from someone what the Quran says. Read it for yourself, the same way I read the New Testament for myself.
Yeah.
And I found out that we're talking about the same message.
Yes.
There is no you and I, there is no us and the others. It's we.
Yes.
We're created by the same God on the same earth,
yeah.
to love him and love each other.
Yes.
Let's learn to love each other.
Yes.
If we claim to love him, like right now, with what's happening in Ukraine, you probably heard the news reporter saying, this is not a third world country. This is European.
Yes.
We have people with blue eyes and blonde hair dying.
Yes. Yes.
What does that mean? Those poor guys in the third world that have brownish skin are less in the eyes of God than the people with blonde hair and blue eyes. I mean, you're rejecting Jesus by saying this. He
That's
was
right.
brown
That's
with
right.
brown eyes. He's my neighbor. I come from where he was born.
Yes.
You know, so people don't think that same 9/11 incident we had a president, President Bush, the son, who claimed to be a Christian.
Right.
When his dad, first President Bush, tried to give him advice, he said, Dad, I listen to a higher father, and refused to listen to his dad.
Yeah.
Well, that higher father taught him through Jesus to love his enemies.
Yes.
If President Bush, the son, responded to 9/11 with love toward his enemies, the whole world would have changed.
That's right.
You would find people finding ways, inventing ways to love their neighbors.
Yes.
Because he would have modeled it. Instead, he attacked Iraq. And we all know today that Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11.
That's right.
We claim that 1 million people died there. Iraqis claim 2.5 million people died there.
Yeah.
And they're innocent people. Had nothing to do with 9/11 or with attacking the United States.
Yes.
For what? Don't you think he will be responsible for what he did? He is responsible. The young Americans that he sent there are victims the same way the young Iraqi who died there are victims.
Yes.
The day of judgment are going to stand in front of God and say, this guy caused me to be sick the rest of my life, to have cancer the rest of my life,
right,
by sending me there, caused me to die, cut my life short. My children had to be raised as orphans because he sent me there. See, modeling is very important. Each one of us have to understand the way you live, tell others how they should live. When we do, if I go to the streets and walk naked in my neighborhood, it means that I'm giving permission to everybody to do the same.
Right.
When I show love for my neighbor. The other day, I was walking a little bit around the neighborhood. I don't walk much, but I wanted to exercise. And I found that at the end of my street, there is an older neighbor, and his wife is old, and they were trying to take grocery from their car to the house. Although I'm the same age, but I still think of myself as a young man. I said, you want me to help you? I'll be glad to help. He looked at me kind of shocked. He said, no, we're doing fine. I said, I'm your neighbor. I will be glad to help you. I love to help my neighbors. Then suddenly he understood what I'm trying to do. Then he started thanking me and assuring me that he'll call on me when he needs help.
That's great.
But at least, you know, I left something good that day that I'm very happy with.
Yes.
Yes, I'm admitting I was modeling love. I was doing it with a preconceived notion, as a meant act of love. And I wanted to mean the same thing to the guy.
Yes.
You know, so yeah, this is how every human being, I think, should understand loving God and loving neighbor.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Safi. And I think that's exactly right. I think
if we all help each other, we will all be better off. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. As you were talking about that, it's one of my favorite things. And it took me a long time to notice this, but even going back to when you were talking about that experiment where you knocked on doors and asked people, how do you love your neighbors, or do you even know them? And they were shocked. I think it's because Christians have gotten this idea that once they know something, that they're blessed, right? Oh, I know that. I understand that. You know, love God, love others. Okay, I know that. So therefore, just because I know this, I'm blessed. Or anything in the Bible, anything of like you teach them. Okay, I understand it. Because I understand it, now I'm blessed because I know it. But that's not true. Jesus contradicts that, and it's in the place where Jesus is washing the disciples' feet. And it's after he washes their feet and he says, you know, do you know what I've done for you? You know, you call me Rabbi, you call me Lord, and that's what I am. That's right. That's true. He goes, but even though I am your Rabbi and your Lord, I kneel down and I wash your feet. And he says, you should do the same for one another. And then he says this is the statement. This is what he says that jumped out at me when I saw it. After all that, then he says, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. And I said, oh my gosh, that's the missing piece, because Christians think that they're blessed when they know it. And Jesus says, no, you're not blessed when you know it. You are blessed when you do it. And
Yes.
this is what's missing. And so I love your examples. And I think this is exactly right. I think we have to get to the place where we understand it's not enough to know it. We have to actually go and do it and put it into practice. And then one last thing, there's also a wonderful quote that I have held on to for many years. There was his name was Fenelon. He was I think a 15th century Catholic bishop or something like this. But anyway, we have some of his writings that he wrote to some people that he was discipling. He was, helping them in their religious, spiritual development. And I have a little book, it's called Let Go. And it's just these little letters that he wrote, a very small book, but someone gave it to me and it really blessed me. And there's a little quote by Fenelon in one of the letters he writes to a young man that he's mentoring. And he says this, he goes, if you stopped learning now, like stop reading, studying, right? Learning about the Bible. He goes, if you just stopped learning today, you would not live long enough to put into practice everything you already know of Christ. And that quote has stuck with me. It's because I think it's so true. We think again that it's about knowing. We have to know, we have to study. And it's useless until we put it into practice. And in fact, most of us know enough. If we just know that God is love, if we just know that we are called to love God and love others, that's enough. You don't need to know anything else. You don't have to study anything else. If you want to, that's fine on your spare time. But until you get to the place where you are putting into practice those simple things, that God is love and you are called to love God and love your neighbor as yourself. Until you're doing that, your faith, your religion is sort of worthless. It's just information.
Do you know what you just did? What you just did is gave a new meaning to born again Christian.
Yes.
Born again is not to accept Christ as your savior. Born again should be accepting Christ as your example, your model.
Yeah.
That you're going to live like he lived. You're going to serve like he served.
Yes.
This is what born again should mean.
I agree.
It's the same thing as the Great Commission. In the Great Commission, Jesus said, go and make disciples. Making disciples means to me, go and teach other the way I taught you. Treat other the way I treated you.
Yep.
Wash other people's feet the way I washed your feet.
Yes.
If you want to be first, you have to be last.
Yep.
This is what the new commission, the Great Commission means as far as I'm concerned.
Me too.
One thing is left to say. I'm very happy we had this conversation, Keith.
Me too.
And I think we need to push that common understanding in a planned way. You see, we live here in this part of the world, and this part of the world is divided on itself.
Yes.
It's a house divided at this time. Even those who claim to be Christians are divided.
Yep.
Into many different ways.
Yeah.
What you are proposing should be common ground that bring everybody into it. I found out that the best way to bring people together, to agree on doing something together, is not to tell them to negate their present belief, but to start doing certain things. I don't want to judge the way they live.
Yeah.
I want to try to help them live in a better way for them and for me as their neighbor. So
yeah.
This is basically the way I plan it as a strategist. So I don't know what you think, but I think we need to go around preaching. That's what I preach every day on Facebook.
Yes.
And you know, I don't like an average Muslim today, when they listen to what we just said, he say, what you talking, what are you talking about? That means there is no need for Keith to convert. Convert to what? He's already a Muslim.
Yeah.
He said, what do you mean? He said, Muslim is from Islam, and Islam has a root, silm. Silm means peace. A Muslim is a peacemaker. If a Muslim doesn't understand his mission on earth to be a peacemaker, then he's confused, and maybe he become a schizophrenic if he doesn't understand it. So Keith is a peacemaker. Islam also means to believe in God and to serve others, and Keith already doing this.
Yeah. So,
and who was the ultimate Muslim in my views? Jesus was the ultimate Muslim, because he submitted to his Father's will.
Yes.
Remember the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus was talking to God and pleading with him, if this is the cup you want me to, you know. So he was basically submitting in everything he does. And this is what a Muslim means.
Yes.
This is what Islam is, to believe in God and to serve others.
Yes.
This is it.
Yeah.
So I don't need to convert you. You don't need to convert me.
No.
What we need to do is take that message to other people, not to convert them, but to basically help them live a better life, a life of peace. If we can live together in peace, that's what God wants us to do on this planet. This is it.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And yeah, Safi, thank you. I thank you for saying that, because I would say the same about you. Like, does Safi have to be converted to Christianity? Well, you're already a Christ follower who loves God and loves others. And I see Christ in you. I hear Christ, the love of Christ in you. And yeah, you're doing great. And I love what you're doing. And I love talking with you, because I always feel that way. I think I told you this last time that we talked. I said, if I was born where you were born, I would probably be exactly what you're doing. You're like the like we're mirror images of each other. You're the Muslim Keith, and I'm the Christian Safi.
Well, God bless you.
God bless
actually, God blessed me with critical thinking and to investigate. Just because I was born Muslim doesn't mean I have to defend everything Muslims believe in. I had to look into it. I had to look into what Christians believe.
Yeah.
And that helped me tremendously. It brought me back to the basics.
Yes.
I thank you for giving me the platform to share all this, sharing my heart with you, basically.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your heart, Safi. I love you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bless.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.